Another 2 weeks. What the hell? Why isn't it shipped? No. It's all right. I didn't land on an aircraft carrier, nothing. Think of something. Welcome to episode 8 of our 10-part series on everything that you need to know to build your first software application except for the code. On today's episode, why does software development take so long? You're going to want to stick around until the end because that's when I'm going to tell you one easy tip that will save you months of development time and thousands, if not tens of thousands of dollars. Reason the first. The planning fallacy. I've talked about Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky before. Please go check out Daniel Kahneman's Thinking Fast and Slow for more on the heuristic called the planning fallacy. And it is everywhere. And most people don't know it, but now you do. It's called the planning fallacy, and here's what it is. I'm going to build the Sagrada Familia. It will only take me a few years. That thing's still not done. And it is way over budget and beyond schedule. This happens all of the time. People make planning fallacies when they are doing estimates for construction, when they're doing estimates for a legal practice, when they're doing estimates for building your software application. People have this optimism bias. It's just who we are. We're all fairly optimistic and think that we can do everything, we can do it all quicker than it actually will take. So be aware of that. When you get a quote and it says 2 weeks, remember the planning fallacy is at play. Don't let yourself be convinced that what the proposal is saying is accurate. Ask a lot of software developers, especially if this is your first time building software, ask other developers, does software ever take longer in development than you think? The answer 90-95% of the time is yes. Which brings us to the related, not quite the planning fallacy, but close. It is a sloppy proposal that the developer has placed before you. As a first-time software developer, you may not have the level of detail that a project manager that has overseen a team that is coding across platforms has seen before, and the level of detail in the proposal may be lacking. Here's a good example. When you're going over your proposal, it might say Android 480 hours, iOS 480 hours. How's that broken down? I mean, it's just kind of put out there. Why is it going to be 480 hours for the iOS? Can they break it down into functions? Can they break it down into the design aspects? Why is it just a big hunk of time? And when it's just a big hunk of time like that, you really can't tell what's going on in that particular estimation. So you might have some sloppy estimation based on more hunch than estimate. Gets back a little bit to the planning fallacy. When conceiving your app idea, be really deliberate. Plan slow, plan carefully, always get rid of features that aren't important. And keep your proposal extremely, like a laser beam if you can. It's what we try to do over at Stumari.co. That's why we tell you to take your idea for your application and test it in the unicorn machine. Understand the value that it is conferring. Nothing else. Then you can prototype it, and then once you have those two pieces of data, you're able to make a very tight proposal. And why do you want a really tight proposal? So that development is done in the quickest amount of time, because what happens? Number 3, development team turnover. You're turning your development project over to other members of the team. Somebody is going to be on the iOS coding, somebody's going to be on the Android coding, the back end might need to be done, we're going to have designers on the front end, quality assurance will be talked about later. These people are resources that are in demand and they can move. They might not just move jobs, maybe they're in over their head and they have to go back to a different area to kind of practice their skills. Also, maybe they get sick, they go on vacation. And you, as the project owner, still want your code done. You have to understand, you've worked on teams yourself before, you've gone to work before, the same constraints are happening to your dev team. There's turnover, And that turnover can be bad because it gets to point number 4, distractions. I wonder what's going on in Facebook these days. You know, that Instagram's so much fun with the memes that it has. We should really get back to coding. Code is very, very complex. When you get into code, and if you've not seen a code base before, you might need to review it and then understand where the parts are all relating together. And then once you understand how all the parts are starting to relate together, then you can look at your specs to see what still needs to be built, and you can start building it so it actually works. Then the phone rings. I'm sorry, this isn't 1998. And then you get a status update of push notification, right? The push notifications. Oh my gosh, I'm getting one. What was I just saying? Exactly, that's the problem. You have a code that is fairly complex, and it takes your developer some time to get in his mind when they are doing the coding that they need to do, and then they get distracted, so then they have to pick back up all the pieces and get going again. There's something that happens with a lot of coders, and they will work in the middle of the night. Why will they work at 3 in the morning? Because nobody's going to bother them. It's a legitimate thing. I will sometimes tell my coders, be like, dude, go to bed, dude. Because, you know, they're usually 12 hours behind or somewhere else in the world. Come up with an idea, Slack channel that, immediately they hit you back, you're like, it has got to be like 3:30 in the morning over there, what's going on? They're just working, that's it. Nobody's bothering them. And that's something you need to understand. Distractions take a lot of time to get back to. Here's a quick tip. You want to know how to fix bugs the fastest? You actually fix them as soon as you find them. Because if you just note it, oh, here's a bug, let's go back and fix that. You have dev turnover, and then you have distraction, so you have to get back into your code to make sure that you can see where the bug is and then iron it out. 5th, edge cases. As a first-time app developer, maybe you've never heard edge cases before. How do I use the Uber app, which you are aware of, and edge cases, which you might not know about, to illustrate the point? Uber is a pretty slick, straightforward app, right? It's easy to use. You open it up and you request a car and the car comes. Now, what happens if something goes wrong? What about if the road isn't there where the Uber driver is told to go? There's a problem with the code on that. Or what if there is an issue with your credit card? How do you handle an issue where the card is declined? That is another conceptual issue in the proposal for the Uber app together. They would need, ideally, to have already have the premonition, the clairvoyance, to be able to see through all these edge cases and include them as to the scope of work. What if the car gets in an accident? What about insurance issues? What if there's no internet connectivity? What if the drive is extremely remote? What about refunds? You know, there's so many bugs that could go wrong in the Uber system because you're talking about organizing all of these cars and all of these riders simultaneously. And they do a pretty great job of it. At least they come off as seeming like they do a pretty great job. Sum up, edge cases are issues with your code that you're not aware of that will arise during the usage of it. Especially when you consider the planning fallacy, you're not really thinking about edge cases, you're just trying to confirm your bias that everything will be fine, this is quite easy. And the reason why you think everything is fine, it should be quite easy, might come back to your own expertise, which is point number 6 as to why development takes so long. It's the business knowledge that a lot of these apps have, and it is unique to you, the businessman who knows this, as opposed to the coder who understands how to build the software, but not really what you're asking the software to do. This has come up with our WorkVisas.Solutions product. I saw an H-1B visa application for the first time, and I'm like, wow, out of everything that I've seen in law, this can totally be coded. What's the mark? You know, start doing all the things that you're supposed to do when you see a project that maybe you want to take on. We did the unicorn machine test, even where you get customer validation from these emails that are just starting to come on, and then it's easier and easier to find people. We even got a sale without even doing any marketing. There is a lot of specific legal knowledge that you need to know about these H-1B visas that the coders do not have. The coders don't know the business that you want your app to do. And that's another reason, getting back to making sure your proposal is as laser-like as you can. trying to catch your edge cases if possible, and also making sure the business assumptions that you as the project owner know really, really well are communicated to your team because they don't know them. You have the expertise and you need to walk them through it the best you can. Your business is complex, and that brings us to the seventh point, complexity. Now we're going to go beyond your business understanding, which the coders don't have. We're going to switch hats. The coders have all this understanding of the tools necessary to build your app. But those technologies shift all the time, and they are quite complex. And a lot of them need to be brought together and used to orchestrate and deliver the software app that you want, that you're ordering through this proposal. That causes additional delay as your team is making all of these third-party pieces of libraries and dependencies and APIs. They don't go stale, something doesn't go wrong. Perhaps when they were putting the proposal together, they were anticipating using a specific framework, and that framework is going out of fashion. What you're building is custom software. It's complex. There's a lot that goes on. I mean, I haven't even seen how many data lines that you're trying to track. The more data, the more complex. It's beautiful the way a lot of it is handled. The first-time app developer may not appreciate the level of complexity, and they might gloss over it and assume that they can be able to find a coder and it should be quite easy to build this because it doesn't have to do all that much. Try to get away from that method of thinking. And let me blow your mind for the last one, number 8. I'm sorry, development is never over. The second a software company or an app company like the one you're trying to build sits still and believes that they are done, they are actually done. Software's always evolving. It's always getting better. It feeds back in on itself, and development is just in production. You have a piece of code that is now out there, and you need to always refresh it and refactor it and keep it on top of all those complexities and all those libraries and all those other things that are always changing. And listen to what your users say so that you can make sure that their experience is the Supra, the party, the cool thing that people like to do. Those are the 8 things you need to know about why development takes so long. Oh, and before I tell you how to save thousands of dollars and months in development time, I do want to mention quality assurance. That gets back to the 7th point, complexity, and a lot of the edge cases will actually be revealed in the QA testing, where suddenly something goes wrong and it hadn't been addressed earlier. In the proposals, they always try to build in that QA time, and now you know what it means. That's a good summary of why development takes so long. And I hope that you're enjoying this 10-part series on everything that you need to know to build your first software app except for the code. If this is your first episode that you're watching and you're enjoying the content, I hope that you give us a thumbs up, hit subscribe, and ask any questions that you have down in the comments. Here's what you've been waiting for: how you save thousands of dollars and months of development time. You probably can kind of guess from what we've been talking about over the course of this episode what you should do. Measure twice, cut once. Spend twice as long as you think you should really conceiving and crafting the proposal. Really do it. Because if you rush into development and you just gloss over details, you're going to spend a lot longer in development, it's going to cost a lot more, and you're just going to be kicking yourself. I'll see you in the next one. That's where we're going to be discussing why most startups fail. The quickest and easiest way to get in contact with me is to go to stumari.co and click on the Contact Me tab. If you want to use Stumari to help build your first mobile app, that's awesome. Just start with our unicorn machine and we'll go from there. Until next time, cheers to the guest. That's good strawberry seltzer water. Ooh, strawberry watermelon.